Hello and welcome to a special episode of the A.R. Bernard Show, showcasing some of this year's greatest moments on our podcast. I'm reflecting on the past year and feeling incredibly blessed and grateful, particularly for my loved ones, confidants, and all of you. In today's episode, we'll revisit conversations I've had with my guests around interpersonal relationships, from mentorship relationships to romantic relationships and parental relationships. You'll hear all about some of the personal connections that have been most influential in the lives of influential people. This year, on the A.R. Bernard Show, we brought you thought leaders such as the Reverend Al Sharpton, Hollywood heavyweights like Latanya Richardson Jackson, and newsmakers like Stephen A. Smith. Each guest has blessed us by sharing their unique perspectives on life, and I hope their openness and vulnerability has educated and inspired you as much as it has me. So, thank you for joining me on this journey, and please enjoy today's special show. You played a key role in helping Sam deal with a problem that he was facing and get help. Are you willing to talk about that?
Let me just say this, and I don't know in podcasts if people believe what happens or believe what you're talking about when you say it, but I'm telling you, as God is my witness, which he always is, I had a dream, and God spoke to me as clearly as when I say I saw him when I was 6 years old. And he said, you cannot leave him in this addiction. He didn't say it wasn't addiction. He said, you can't leave him sick. Stay with him, and I'm going to show you what to do to help him get out of it. And then you can decide to do whatever you want to do. I promise you, that came to, I saw that, and I have never forgotten that. And I said, because my whole thing was, oh no, I'm not living with this. This is madness. This is too, are you crazy? Yeah, you are crazy. But so I said, okay, I got a daughter, and I was raised by my grandparents who, people who, in a house where people, if they were drinking or something, that was like, nobody was, none of that. It couldn't be done in our house. So I'm that's inside of me. So I'm like, oh no, you're gonna be a crazy person, a drug addict? You gotta go, because I got a daughter to raise, and we're not having that. I don't come from that. We're not having that. And I had that dream, because I was trying to figure out, okay, where am I going? And so I said, okay. I called his best friend, who's a doctor, that he grew up with, best man in our wedding, and he said, okay, can you let him stay there? Though we were in our brownstone, always blessed in our brownstone here in New York, and Alan said, Latanya, I'll get him out of there, but don't put him out tonight. I said, how am I gonna stand here with a crazy person? I'm like, he said, just, he's not bothering you.
I said, it was alcohol, right?
He was an alcoholic drug addict.
Okay, so it's a combination of
crack.
Drugs and alcohol. Okay.
And he spent the night, the night passed, and the next morning, Alan called and he said, I can't get him until tomorrow. So you gotta keep him one more day. And in that time, the next night, I had the dream. And it was like, okay, so what does this mean now? Because I was getting ready to pawn him off to Alan. Alan said, here are the programs. You all have insurance. Thank God for insurance then. It was really great then at SAG. Insurance, I'm going to put him in a place that's near New York, Darien, Connecticut. He's going to go in there. They're going to pick him up, blah, 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 blah. And that's what happened. And I'm thinking, okay, he's got this rehab program he's in, 28 days, plus a follow-up. It's a 28-day plus a follow-up week that you have to go back and forth. There I sat with my 7-year-old daughter in these meetings when we had to go listening to this craziness, like all the people. And he said, when we were in school, she used to smoke weed, she used to do drugs, and then she just one day walked away. I said, and they said, because she doesn't have an addictive personality. And I said, yeah, and I was trying to be off, like, Zonks. I'm like, that wasn't my energy. It never was. I said, so no. And I found out that he resented that I could just walk away like that from it. I said, okay, whatever. And the conversations that we hadn't had, he started to have in there. And it was like, okay, but you're still gonna have to go. Once you get well, still have to go. But it didn't happen. The more he went through the program, and the more when he got out that I was really trying to do what God said. You got to help. You have to be a helpmeet. You got to be there. And you know what? And one day I realized, I said, I know this is my husband. I thought that meant a lot more than what I was going through. And I realized, I said, but he is my job. I said, he's my job.
Wow.
So there I was. It was like, come on, because I got to go to work. We're doing this, we're doing that. And it just, one day turned into the next day and the next day, because I was on my job now. Next day, the next day. And it just, one day I looked up and we were like sitting all having dinner. We always had dinner. That was the other thing, because I always cooked. Me, him, and Zoe sitting there, and it was like, okay, we made it through.
Married to Angela Bassett. Let's talk about Hollywood, man. Hollywood. And not everyone has been able to survive Hollywood. We hear so much about couples, and they're in the mix of that world, that culture, and it's destructive to them individually, personally, and inevitably to their marriage relationship. But there have some who, because of certain principles, values, ideas that they subscribe to and held fast to, have made it. You guys continue to be a model of what it means to be in that context, and yet, maintain family, maintain the marriage, maintain respect. So is there a secret, or is it simply a way of thinking?
Both.
Okay.
The secret is in that book. I said, when I was going through it, I came across 1 Peter 3:7, live with a woman according to knowledge that she is the weaker vessel, not weaker in terms of strength, but that she is emotional, that your prayers are not hindered. I saw that and I said, whoa, what are you saying, Lord? Are you saying that if I don't care for her emotional life and make sure that she feels safe and secure emotionally, that all the prayers that I have going up about what I would like you to do for me and for our family, they're stopped? I said, got it. The focus is not me. The focus is her. Men, we think, because that's what the world says, that a man is the king and the woman's the queen, and she should be waiting on me hand and foot. And that is not the way it works. What the world thinks is one way, but what the Bible says is that she's the focus is her. The man may be the head, but the woman is the neck, and the head don't go nowhere that the neck don't tell it to go. So we have to I had to refocus my mind. And once I heard that and the Lord spoke to me, I said, got it. Honey, is there anything you need me to do? What can I do? And when I mess up, which I do every day, Pastor, I say, baby, what? I'm sorry. What? Wow, to last night I had to go, baby, I thought I was doing right. I'm so sorry. I messed it up again, didn't I? I messed it up again. Okay, look. This is what I'm going to do. I had to redo it. And I said, nothing's been done. Let's redo this thing so that you are in the mix of it. And she said, okay.
It's
That's my life. That's my life.
Man, it is amazing. Karen and I will be celebrating 52 years of marriage, man.
Hallelujah.
And 2 words I've learned: adapt and adjust, and practice those things. But it is so true how a woman responds to the right kind of leadership. I think about the words that says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. That's challenging, man. When you think of redemptive love and the patience, the empathy, all that's required for a person to love redemptively, I had to step back and say, I don't know if I could measure up, and I couldn't.
But you can't, and we can't without him.
That's it.
Without him, we can't. We will fail miserably, and I fail. But with him, he says, I can do
all things. Come on, all things.
That's it. We're outside of him.
Yeah.
And that's why I said when I had that break, the Lord said, now let's go. I'm ready for you. Let's go. Yeah. I've been ready. I've been waiting for this moment. Let's go, Courtney. I was like, got it. Let's go. And because I tried it my way, Pastor. Yeah. And I ended up on a hospital bed. I tried it my way.
Yeah, but you see, we're talking about the practicality of our faith, because too often people think it's just some spiritual Sunday thing, or, they get caught up in the ritual and practice and not realize that it's very practical. It is something that applies to every aspect of your life.
The honeymoon is over. Once the honeymoon is over, you've got to, how to become one.
Yeah.
Is a mystery, and you've got to know how to bring, as the man, as the head, be the head and saying, I'm sorry, and meaning it, even though in your spirit, you ain't do nothing wrong.
Yeah.
What did I do?
I'm
gonna sit here and argue with you. I didn't do nothing. Yes, you did. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. No, I did. So who's going to be the bigger person and say, I'm sorry, and bring us back so we can begin to have a conversation about, so baby, tell me what I did. You got really angry and started crying. I don't know what I did. Tell me what I did.
Now, you brought up something there when you said the man is the head, because, we are living in an age of equity, equality, and the whole idea of the man being the head of the woman or the head of the household needs to be clarified, because in this age, we're saying, wait a minute, that sounds like something antiquated and removed from, where we are today. And our faith needs to make certain adjustments. But when you say the man being the head, you're not talking about a hierarchy of value, because men and women, we're ontologically equal, but different in function, different in roles that we play and we occupy. So when you use the term the man is the head, you're talking about a hierarchy of responsibility. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure, because, our viewers, our listeners will be quick to stand up and say, well, wait a minute. Is this a complementarian point of view, or, should we subscribe to an egalitarian relationship?
We all know that when we see a man and a woman out, and a man, you can tell when something is right or wrong when the woman goes out in front and the man is behind, kind of like, so but when we see the man, whatever is, he acknowledges her and he treats her first, and and that's what I learned, is that the power of submission, the power of humility. The Bible says you humble yourself and he'll exalt you. So I had to get to the place where I said, I don't have to do this. I'm gonna let you do this, and you're gonna put me where I'm supposed to be. I had to give up my ego in this. And because Angela was watching me to see if I was the man that I said I was. And so can you let her be her, and let that be okay? Because if I do, she'll turn around eventually and give me what I need. The respect that men crave, that we crave, that respect. But that you're not going to get that respect until you give it.
There's something that I read about you and that resonated with me deeply because my wife has MS, multiple sclerosis, and it's been some 40 years that
Wow.
she's gone through a process of physical problems, beginning with her eyes, and it's progressed. It's gotten worse, lack of mobility, and it's been a tough situation. We keep her in good spirits, so she's very happy. She still plucks my nerves, so that means she's okay.
All right.
As long
She's
as
in
she's
there.
doing that, she's good. And we have grandchildren and whatnot. But something my son said, we were in a public platform and he was talking. He said, well, my dad is a caregiver because my mom suffers from MS. And when he said that, it was the first time that
You
I
realize.
even realized
Mm-hmm.
that I was a caregiver
Yep.
to
You
my
are.
wife. I mean, I'm doing everything I can to make sure that she's secure, that she's okay.
Yep.
But I never saw myself as a caregiver. It was a revelation for me. Your father had Alzheimer's.
Yeah, he's
And
still here. Yeah,
and you are a caregiver for him.
I am.
Tell us about that.
I am in my 11th year as his caregiver. And I'm glad you mentioned that because there are so many people, more people than they know are caregivers. Parents are technically caregivers. If you have an aunt in another city and you're the one that makes sure she gets her food and stuff sent from Costco, you are a caregiver. You're providing care to someone doing something for someone that they can't do for themselves, and often sacrificially. My dad has Alzheimer's. I went to get him in Cleveland in 2013. So he lived with me for 10 years up until the last 4 months, last 2 months actually. April of this year, he had a fall and he broke his hip and he had surgery and we went through the whole rehab nursing facility, and the dementia told him that he couldn't walk anymore. When it came time to do physical therapy, he just could not figure out how to do it. So he no longer is able to walk, and I could no longer care for him in my home as I had been. And there was a lot of guilt tied to it. And I've spoken about this publicly. A social worker that I was working with trying to figure out what was best for my dad, he said to me something that changed my entire perspective. It didn't remove the guilt, but it helped me understand that I was making the right decision despite the guilt. He said, would your time be better spent as your dad's nursemaid or his daughter? And I was like, wow, what if your dad was in his right mind and could tell you what he wanted for you? Would he want you with him as his nurse or as his child? And I know that my dad would want me at his side as his child. And he said, and I want to ask you, Daniel was the social worker. He said, I want to ask you one other thing. He said, do you think that there's anyone on this earth that could care for your father better than you? He said, no one can love him better than you. But is there someone that could care for him at this stage better than you? And I had to admit that, yes, there is. There's lots of people that could care for him. And he said, so wouldn't your time be better spent trying to find that person or that facility or that home or that board and care and making sure he had the care that he needs, and then you could just be his kid? And I was like, whoa. And so that took some of the guilt, some of the weight off. And then I did make it my priority to find him an amazing place. And he is with loving people. It's a small home. It's a boarding care. So it's him and 3 other men. And they have the same 2 caregivers every day, round the clock, which is great for people with dementia. It is 15 minutes from my house. So I see my dad as often as I want. It's not every day, all day like it was before, but it's enough for me to feel like we still have the same connection. And, he settled in, like he knows that that's his home. His room there is as lovely as his room was here with me. I can go there at any time of day. So I've caught him, at every stage of his day. And I know that they're taking care of him at every stage of his day because they don't know when I'm coming. I pop in all the time. It's 10 o'clock. Hey, guys, just come in and see how Dad is doing. And they know Yvette could come at any time. So even if they were trying to do something crazy, they're not going to try me.
Because
So
you'll be there watching, of course.
I'm there. So it's been great. And I'm glad that this experience has dovetailed. I think we'll talk about it maybe a little later, but I have a wonderful podcast called Squeezed, which is a love letter to caregivers of all kinds. We talk to teachers, we talk to parents, we talk to parents that are also caring for their kids and their parents. And it's really a safe place for people just to maybe turn it on while you're washing dishes or driving somewhere or sitting with your loved one, and just take the load off for a minute and laugh and learn, and yes, cry, because there's a lot, as you know, as a caregiver, there's a lot of really hard moments that are a part of it. But thankfully, there's joyous moments too, and I just cling to the joy, and cling to friends and hang on friends when the rough patches come.
So let's talk about Sean Hannity.
Yep.
He's right wing.
Yep.
Clearly. This is what he does, and he tries his best to do it well. But you have a relationship with
Yes,
him.
I do.
Why?
Sean Hannity and I go back 20 years. When I first got into the business, when I first arrived at ESPN, he saw me on TV, thought I was a real talent, was very complimentary towards me. We'd run across one another, say hello, et cetera, et cetera. When I got fired in 2009, there was no bigger advocate speaking out about how I had gotten screwed over and I had gotten treated unfairly. There was no bigger advocate than him and Mark Levin, who's also a big-time conservative radio host. And years later, when I got suspended because we were talking about domestic violence, and I was simply talking about, I uttered the word provoke. I wasn't trying to say that a woman provokes domestic violence. You remember I had that discussion with you.
Yeah.
What I was saying is that, well, if you have daughters, and I have daughters, at a moment where strife or a very, very tense situation develops, I'm thinking about you getting out of there so you can live to fight another day. Daddy ain't around. Aunts, uncles ain't around. You don't have brothers, etc. You're by yourself. What can you do to get out of that situation in the moment so you can live to fight another day? Because you got some crazy folks out here.
Yeah.
Especially a man that would be indecent enough to put his hands on a woman, which I have never done. Okay? So I was speaking about that. And it was shifted into me uttering the word provoke and implying that a woman provokes domestic violence upon herself.
I remember.
And the critics pounced on it, and you remember how furious I was.
Oh, yeah.
It was the
great,
to this day, it is the greatest insult that I have ever received in my professional career. I was raised by 5 women. You knew my mama, my 4 older sisters. Everybody knows I would never put my hands on a woman. I would never condone putting my hands on a woman. A matter of fact, I've gotten in trouble, and men have gotten in trouble for coming to the defense of women who were having their hands put on by a man. So it is incredible. It's the greatest insult that I have ever received in my career. But nevertheless, ESPN at the time, under that leadership, caved to public pressure and suspended me. And it was crickets everywhere. Barely anyone spoke up for me. And I always remember that. Sean Hannity was one of those people. Mark Levin was another. And I never forgot it.
What does it say?
And so because of that, I argue and butt heads with them all the time about politics.
That's my
all
point.
the time.
But you can have a civil relationship outside of that context.
Exactly. And they appreciate it. Here's what they appreciate about me. I don't think they're racist because they disagree with me. I don't view them that way. We argue, we butt heads, the whole bit. I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you doing? Because in their world, the liberals have destroyed this country because, economic stability, national security, controlling our borders. To them, it's blanket. It's just like that. To me, it's a bit more complex than that. And it's not to say they're devoid of complexity, because obviously they're 2 very smart individuals. I'm just simply saying they view it differently than I do. But here's the thing about me, for better or worse. Pastor, if you're a white middle-aged guy or older, I don't expect you to have the same sensibilities I have. We come from two different worlds. I've seen people like, you know, they're looking at a Ted Cruz, or they're looking at, I remember Strom Thurmond was in South Carolina, and Armstrong Williams was like a mentor. I couldn't understand that. You understand? I couldn't understand that. And I'm looking at, they're not going to have our sensibility. I remember when Jerry Jones made news because of some of the positions he took involving Colin Kaepernick, involving the protest and stuff like this. And Jerry Jones was famous with the Cowboys. According to reports, insiders, he had a meeting during the whole protest and taking the knee and all of this stuff. And Jerry Jones said, I can appreciate where y'all coming from, but this is Texas. He said, and down here, they think a bit differently. And you doing something like that is going to affect my bottom line. Let me assure you, if it affects my bottom line, it's going to affect your bottom line. And that's what supposedly he
brought it
said.
to the money, yeah.
So I'm saying to you, you're looking at a Jerry Jones, somebody's looking at a Jerry Jones, and they're looking at this 80-plus-year-old man from Arkansas. I'm looking at that, plus the fact that he's a billionaire. And I'm like, he's a bit detached from the kind of experiences normal black folks have. Why would I expect him to have my sensibilities? I don't expect it. Yeah. All I can hope for is that, let's talk this out. Let's have a conversation. Put your ideas and your perspective and your position up against mine. Let's have that conversation. Because trying to bully you into doing so, I may find one way to do it, but it'll come back to bite us. And one of the things that I utilize is, let's take, for example, the strikes that were taking place in Hollywood. When you had SAG-AFTRA and the directors and others, you know, against the studios. Yeah, they reached an accord. Yeah, money was lost. We won something. Fine. Have you noticed that not many shows are being produced as it used to be? Have you noticed that the number of opportunities that was out there to build content, create and build content? Let's say, for example, you might create 10 to 12 shows a year. You might greenlight that. Now it's dwindled to 6 to 8. They're gonna get their money. They're gonna get their money. They're gonna find a way to make sure that no matter how much you think you pinched them, they pinched you.
Yeah.
That's the world that I'm exposed to.
And that's the way it works.
And that's the way it works.
Yeah.
And so we can be altruistic, and we could have this mentality. This is the way it should be. And I'm not disagreeing with that. But I also have an obligation to pay attention to what is and how it works. And when I think about, to get back to your original question about the Sean Hannity and stuff, folks think about, he's talking and he's cool with Sean Hannity. You're not thinking about the fact that he's giving me the airwaves, same airwaves that he has, to disagree with him, to challenge him, to be on him about what I feel. That's the difference. See, when you're in a cocoon and you just saying what you're saying and spewing what you're spewing and building this following.
That bubble, yeah.
That bubble, right? And you're not subjecting yourself to any kind of scrutiny, you got a point. But when he's saying, all right, here's the platform, say what you got to say, and we're putting our beefs out on Front Street, well, then who knows who that's going to sway? And that's how I think about it.
But there's a relationship
Yes.
that's foundational to that
Yes.
experience. And that's the problem. We don't have those kind of relationships, enough of those kind of relationships where two individuals who disagree with each other can sit down and have that conversation.
Which is what I tell Sean Hannity and Mark Levin all the time. Everybody ain't me. I can talk to y'all. Everybody don't get the opportunity to talk to y'all. Y'all got to be a bit more reasonable, you know? And they go, come on, Stephen. And I'm like, come on. You got to do that. Sometimes they agree with me. Sometimes they don't. But you'd be surprised how they might have a perspective. And I can sit up there and say, don't do that. Here's why. Yeah, you got a point.
You said something.
Yeah.
Because you're on an award-winning program,
Yeah.
The Wheel. And you were talking pop culture. You were
100%.
talking about social issues, politics, spirituality, morality, across the board. But you said it forced you to get smart. It forced
did.
you to start reading, to start researching.
Asking the questions, talking to people that I trust and believe, listening to you. I mean, I'm going to be honest. There was a point where I was like, I'm looking for somebody to steer me in the direction so that I can have an understanding of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Is being like, I love the fact that you are the person that really does connect those two. Like, it is the intersection of culture and faith and politics and all that's going on in the world. And I loved hearing your perspective. And I'm not going to lie, I should have probably you might be owed some money for some of the things I
You owe me
said.
some royalties.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
a
there's
lot
some people
of my,
around the globe that owe me some
yeah,
royalties.
but that's the reality. If someone's your pastor, that shifts your perspective on things, and I was able to share that perspective, hopefully, in the best way I knew how. But I remember feeling like, okay, I have the option to just go, I don't care about that, and that doesn't affect me, which I really did not like hearing people say, because we're still in such a place that we need to stay informed. We don't have the luxury of saying, oh, I don't care, oh, my vote doesn't count. We don't have that luxury to say that, because there are changes being made for us, and they're going to affect us.
Yeah.
I thought the last election was the most pivotal election ever. I am absolutely convinced this one is whoa. Because when I'm seeing a lot more about this Project 2025 and just the idea of stripping rights across the board for people. If I'm reading it correctly, there's sort of this, I know former President Trump just said a week ago, I don't know anything about Project 2025.
That's what I was literally just going to say.
I wish them well, but I don't know what it is. And I'm like, I've actually heard you say that before, and you knew exactly what was going on.
Yeah.
I literally was about to say, there are people that will say that Republicans don't even know what that is, that they don't even know that that's propaganda from the Democrats saying that this thing exists that they claim does not. So do you get what I'm saying?
It's 942 pages.
Yeah.
And I reviewed it.
And it's available for you to read.
Yeah.
Read it
You can
yourself.
get it. You can get a PDF. You can download it.
That's why I love
online.
Dr. Bernard, because
Yeah.
he actually read it.
You read all nine.
And
Yeah, you did.
942 pages.
Yeah, you did.
And understand where it comes from. It comes from the Heritage Foundation.
Correct.
That presents itself as a research and educational institution to promote conservative values, conservative views, things like limited power of government. So big government is a no-no, all right? The powers of government and government interference or intervention in public life should be limited. So small government, all right? Limited taxation, because it presents a burden on the society, and free enterprise, which is
Now, I'm all about
one of
limited
those things.
taxation. Don't get me
Yeah,
wrong.
Well, again, when a lot of these plans and programs come up, we've got to ask, well, how are we going to pay for
No,
them?
I was being
And the
facetious,
first
but-
thing we do is we talk about taxes.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is we have a small segment of society that's doing very, very well, and part of doing well is avoiding taxes.
That part.
That the larger portion of the
Yeah.
population has to pay.
Yeah. That's
They don't get these
And
little
that's
shortcuts
unfair.
and loopholes,
right.
et cetera. So, Heritage Foundation is pushing conservative values, so limited government, limited taxation, personal responsibility, and free enterprise, which I subscribe to.
Sure.
I'm concerned about the role of government in society.
Sure.
All right? I'm concerned about the freedom to express our creativity and translate it into value in the marketplace.
But let me ask this question.
That's-
At the same time, they're saying we want less government involvement, but then they're also saying, but in education, we need to remove this, and this. Let's remove African American studies. Let's remove African American history.
slavery.
Any talk of slavery, that's got to go.
Yeah.
And so you're like, but I thought you don't want the government getting involved. So doesn't that sound like a bit of an oxymoron?
And those are the questions that need to be asked, and that's why
That's
this
why we're here.
This platform
We're
is
asking you.
perfect for this kind of conversation.
Yeah.
Because it's all in the question. How you ask the question, what you ask, that's critical. That determines the kind of answers that you get. And the reality is, because you talk about Christians, and I'm careful here because, again, you look to me and congregation, and many look to me for how do you make sense? Let me hear what A.R. Bernard has to say. How do we make sense about what's going on in the society?
For sure.
And how do we put a faith lens, our faith? How does our faith inform us in response to the realities of the world we live in? So for me, the social mind and understanding the social mind, what influences and shapes the social mind is critical.
Yeah.
All right. And the Bible is filled with information about how to respond to that social mind. I'm preaching the gospel to the social mind. And we're talking about the social mind and all of its influences. So people are looking for trusted voices.
That's right.
That they can open themselves
100%.
to respond when the conversations take place. Theology doesn't take place in the halls of academia. It takes place on the front line where you guys are.
That's right.
The layperson, in the marketplace. That's where it really happens, in the home. And my passion is to empower people to have that conversation, to give them the language and the perspective. But you're there, you're on the ground. I learn from you guys. I hear your responses, I hear the questions that are being asked, and then I go back and say, okay, how do I empower them to have these conversations?
I love that.
Let's talk a little bit in the time that we have left about your family.
Yes.
I like that.
I do too.
You got proud, big smile. Tell us about family life. What's family life for Jamie Hector?
Family life is love, it's fun, and it's a schedule. They give you a schedule, you know, because I have a 7-year-old daughter, 7-year-old son, 14-year-old daughter, and married for 15 years. Wow.
Yeah, take a moment.
Takes a moment because you know time flies, and we really just enjoy this journey of understanding that we're building something. You know, we come together as a unit, and we have boundaries, right? Because it creates boundaries as well. You know, the things that you may want to do. You remember that you have a family at home. You know, so. There's certain things that you're not going to do, certain things you're not going to partake in, good, bad, whatever the case may be, but just knowing that you have people that you want to secure and take care of and protect. We enjoy traveling, we enjoy reading, we enjoy just talking about, my wife, she's in corporate. Just so for me to be able to sit back and listen to that conversation about the corporate world, right, about politics and how one affects the other. And then I come in with my little abstract way of thinking, like, I saw that little twitch in his eyes. He's suspect. He's not really sincere about his conversation, because that's what I do. I study behavior without even wanting to do it. It's just a natural thing for me. But we just enjoy this. So I'm saying that to say that she's been working from home for over 10 years. So that was before COVID. So we spent a lot of time with each other. So whereas my kids don't understand the experience of not coming home to their mother and father after school.
Yeah.
They're car kids, right? It's like drop off, pick up. It's like, you're home now. No, you're hungry. It's like, so, which also allows us to understand, because that's how we were raised, coming home to no one being home.
Right. Yeah. Been there, done that myself.
Yeah.
I was a latchkey kid, but the latch didn't work.
Yeah.
I was on the streets, man. I was on the streets. My mother was working 2 jobs.
There goes.
That's the way it is. But it's important that you demonstrate, you model that you can have a career in acting, in the arts, and still be a family man. And that the family plays a role in keeping you grounded.
Absolutely.
In all the work that I've done over the years, my family is so important to me, because I realize how they have shaped and fashioned certain fundamentals that guide my life.
Absolutely.
And I see that in you. I'm proud of it. Let's talk about your experience as a child of Holocaust survivors. Did your parents talk much about their experience?
Firstly, thank you for allowing me to talk about 2 people who meant everything to me. And went through so much. I remember when I had to prepare their memorial monument, you know, I wrote, they loved each other and they loved tomorrow because they live for tomorrow. They did not talk about the Holocaust. The one time I was able to get them to talk, and it led to a few discussions, but not many, was when I found pictures of young children at home in a drawer. And I said, who are these? And, well, we'll tell you at some point. And then they finally admitted these were their children. They had died during the Holocaust. Between them, they lost 7 children. So I'm a product of that marriage, but those children come from their previous spouses who were lost as well. So they didn't want to impose the guilt on me, but they were also not reticent to say that it was very painful to live through that period without going into detail. You know, Elie Wiesel said, in life, when you're born, you begin, but you have to learn sometimes how to begin again. And they began again. And I'm proud to be a product of that relationship, but I also have I think somewhat survivor's guilt. I always felt I had to do something for those children who were left behind. If I could just tell you a story you may know about, in the Talmud, Jewish commentary on the Torah, there's a question about 2 people being in the wilderness with 1 canteen of water. If both drink, both die. If one drinks, one survives, but the other dies. Who should drink from the canteen of water? And we have this debate. And finally, the consensus opinion is the person who owns the canteen has the right to drink because your life takes precedence. You have to save your own life first. Although others disagree, but that's the majority view. However, the person who drinks from the canteen knows that he or she has a responsibility to the one who couldn't drink from the canteen. So I've often felt that being a rabbi and being involved in the Jewish world was my way of perpetuating the lives of those who didn't drink from the canteen, because I was able to drink from the canteen. So it's always been with me. I remember, I think I once shared it with you, at my bar mitzvah when I became 13 years old, we have a party, and the party planner came over to my parents and said, look, give me the names of your family because we're going to light 13 candles tonight. So give me the family members. And my father looked at her and said, we don't have 13 family members. We have maybe 3 or 4 who are here. We don't have 13. So we had friends coming up. And that's why I value our friendship. So it was a happy home, but you always knew
It was something.
there was
there.
something, yeah.
But you, I'm sure, you were curious. You wanted to know. You wanted to understand the experience that they had that they wouldn't talk about. So you studied the Holocaust. You read about it. How did your research affect you in understanding what they went through but were not willing to really talk about?
I remember when I visited Israel, I went to Yad Vashem, which is the Holocaust Memorial, Holocaust Remembrance. And I saw the names of the righteous Gentiles, the Christians who saved Jewish lives. And I thought to myself, what was it in them that inspired them to risk their lives, to rescue the lives of the Jews? And I always felt I owe them too. And I want to do something that perpetuates their memory. So the study of the Holocaust for me was also a study of responsibility for me, that I had to do something for those who couldn't be here anymore. I remember Abba Eban once said that the Israelis were able to win that War of Independence in 1948 because they had 6 million on their side. He was talking about the 6 million who were lost in the Holocaust. We've always carried that. That's why we have Holocaust remembrance. But it's not enough to just remember. We have to commit to doing something. So it's not just a matter of saying prayers and offering some comforting words. It's a matter of doing. Belief is measured by behavior. So we believe, in the beauty of who they were, but our behavior has to be such that we make sure that never again has an exclamation mark, not a question mark.
It's tough.
It is.
My wife and I had a son that we lost October of 2021. He had a lifelong battle with alcoholism.
Yes, sir.
That is a problem on my wife's side. Her grandfather, her father, her uncles, her cousins, her aunts. So we told our boys, I have 7 sons, we told our boys very early on, look, you have a predisposition to this.
Yes, sir.
And you've got to settle it in your mind, the kind of relationship that you're going to have with any type of substance, whether illegal or legal.
Yes, sir.
And problem with alcohol, it's a legal substance.
Yes,
so
sir.
it's available. And early on, age 16, he started drinking and got into a place where it was difficult for him. He had a stretch, he got married, had children, but then there was that period where it was on decline. And it was challenging.
Sorry for your loss.
Thank you. I appreciate
I'm
that.
really sorry that you had to go through that. I know exactly how you feel.
Well, your book talks about that,
Yes,
and you share that publicly. You're transparent with it, and we've learned to be. I think one of the toughest things for me, and I want to ask you the question, how you felt about it. We had the resources available to him that he could have changed the course of his life, but he refused them. He was convinced that, the only way he could deal with life was to anesthetize himself, to just numb himself to the realities that he had to deal with on a daily basis. And we felt handcuffed because, again, we could have brought in the best doctors, the best therapy, the best of everything. And we had to accept that he didn't want it. How did you feel? Because you're in the same situation with your son.
Yeah, we sent him to rehab twice, and it was very, very, very expensive. And I think he went 2 more times. I think my son was just sick. Period. I think it started out with making bad decisions, and then he got into a space where he was just sick, and he was just battling that. And the way I have compartmentalized in my mind, I just think that God just took him, to remove him from that sickness, to waking up, to have that urge and have these battles with your family, and life was just so chaotic. But one thing my son did do, my son came back to the church before he died. My son got baptized 3 weeks before he died. And I'm glad he did that. I'm glad that I did install that foundation in him to the point where at least he started coming back to church. That's where he was still suffering. I just didn't know what else to do. I didn't know how else to help him. Our relationship was estranged because with sickness becomes certain behavior. I didn't have a full understanding of it at the time because I'm a black dad. And, I think you ain't gonna talk to me that way, and he just died. I did everything I could to save his life.
Yeah.
Everything I could, everything in my power to try to help him. I was even helping him when he didn't know I was helping him.
Yeah. I understand that fully.
Yes, sir.
Did you have to get to a place where you accepted that it wasn't your fault? Or did you feel a degree of guilt?
I never felt like it was my fault. I never had a night where I didn't sleep based out of guilt. Guilt for what? I didn't do anything. I did the best I could.
And you understand why I asked that, because
yes,
people
sir.
will get to the place,
they was
what could
asking
I
me.
have done better? What could I have done different?
I had family members. I had mostly family members asking me certain questions to make me think, like, why do you think I feel guilty?
Mm.
You know, I did the best I could with what I had. You know, it ain't my grandparents' fault that my dad died.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather was a great dad, because I know he was a great grandfather. You know, I don't feel guilty about anything. If I did anything, if I could have did anything better with my son, I coddled him as well. I was hard on the rest of them.
Mm-hmm.
But this particular one, by him being my firstborn, I was the one that snuggled and coddled him. And they would get in arguments about, because he would tell the younger sibling that his child, he had the best childhood, and he did. He had the best childhood, because I was a young dad. But that, I don't think got him making those bad decisions.
Mm-hmm.
He was trained, he was raised in the church, raised to work, worked in the yard all the time. He's a hard worker. I talked to him. We had a lot of conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And he just got in a space where he didn't listen. I got him through high school, drove him off to college. We drove off to Alabama State listening to Biggie and Tupac. It was a whole party in the car with me and my son, taking him off to college with all this stuff packed in the back. Going up in there, cleaning the room, Lysol, Clorox wipes, getting his room clean, decorating it. Just me and him. Got his room straight, walked me back to the car, big old hug, all right, have fun, enjoy Alabama State University. And once you drop them off in college, every decision that they make after that is theirs to make. You have done all that you could.
Then why did you write the book? What was the objective? Is it just was there any therapy that you got out of it? Or
yeah, I got a lot.
Was there something that you wanted to warn other people about?
Yeah, I wanted to warn people. I got a lot of therapy out of it. I wanted to tell the story. And I hope that it blessed other people that's grieving, whether you lost a son, a mother. It's a book with a lot of quotes in it, a lot of scriptures in there, and talking about the angels, talking about the beams of light, right when you think it's dark, but you get those beams of sun rays coming through the clouds.
Mm-hmm.
And then you know that you can move forward with faith. Because in these situations, you have to, and yourself, you just can't lean on God when your child died. God is literally carrying you.
I know you as a person. You have gratitude for how it launched you and Bebe.
Mm-hmm.
Your singing career, her singing career, the two of you. So there's no doubt in my mind. But having a conversation about the hard realities of the context, and then taking it and putting it into a production.
Yes. And
let's talk about those realities first.
The reality was when my mom came back down and was leaving me and Cece in Charlotte, she asked Jim and Tammy, and she asked Howard and his wife, Shay, to take care of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is what Jim and Tammy did. They really took care of me and Cece. Didn't know till afterwards when writing the musical how much they covered us. And so one of the things that I learned was racism in the church. Oh my, I didn't know that existed until.
Well, you're coming from Detroit.
I'm coming from Detroit.
Down to
I'm
Carolina.
Exactly, everything. But I was excited because, again, I love people. So it was like, I was excited. Oh, I'm going down to meet some white people.
Yeah.
And so you could feel that. I think people can feel when love is real, when you're meeting them. So there was a love that Jim and Tammy had for me and Cece that others were jealous of and hated us more because of that. So But we never took advantage of the love that Jim and Tammy have. But we respected everything that was, set up. You have a problem, you go here. You don't go straight to Jim. You da. So we did that. But what God used in the gift that He gave us, it even brought us closer to Jim and Tammy. Again, when we sung "Lord Lift Us Up" 250 million times, and every time God would show up, and so that meant something to them in the spirit world, but in the natural world too, because people were coming more to spend.
It was a draw.
It was a draw
to PTL Club. Yeah.
Yeah. So we knew, okay, we're a draw, but there was moments when I would bump into complete hatred. So, for instance, there was a TV guy. His name was Rick. He passed away a couple of years now, but he was the camera guy. And so between the studio and cameras, you're speaking, and you're talking all the time. And so one day he was leaving, and he was coming to everybody saying, I'm leaving, this and that. When he got to me, he started bawling, crying, hysterical, and just said, thank you. And I thought he's saying thank you because I know at one point one of his children had a hospital, something with his blood. And so I, gave and prayed for him and this and that. And then he looked at me and said, I hated you. I said, you hate? Because my family, we speak with our hands too, how you doing, touch,
Yeah.
And he said, every time you would speak or touch me, I would cringe. And I'm like, okay, well, now you got my underwear. What are you talking about? He said, I was raised in a Christian home where my parents taught us to hate Black people and that Black people were evil. So now I'm really confused because you just said a Christian home.
Yeah. Oxymoron.
Yeah. I was raised in a Christian home.
Yeah.
They didn't teach us that. And then he said something that would never, ever leave me. He said, but because of the love you showed me, you broke the chains of hatred. And I want to thank you. Oh, Pastor, I remember right then saying, love is more powerful than hatred.
My full conversations with all of these guests and more can be found on all podcast platforms. So make sure to like, subscribe, and share. And I'll see you next time right here on The A.R. Bernard Show.